Hey everyone! Today we're going to be redesigning some more cookies, this time from the amazing digital Circus. So sit back, relax, and let's get to cooking on the cookies. First on our agenda is Jax. He's playful, mischievous, has a little bit of a hunger for violence. I know Jax has always been a fan favorite, and I hope that saying that he's my favorite doesn't make me too basic. I will say that a lot of people seem to be disappointed with the way that he was after the pilot. Honestly, I think he's perfect just the way he is. Whenever I was thinking of his CookieRun design, I had a pretty clear image of what I wanted to begin with. He made me think of those little bunny peep marshmallow things, right? And then I looked it up and they do actually come in purple. I have no idea what they taste like because I'm not a big marshmallow fan. But as soon as I saw that cute little purple bunny with that little face, I was like, yes, that is what we're doing, but make it violent. I did struggle with his ears a little bit because the peeps, their ears are very close to each other, but then Jax's ears are far away. And I think that the finished design ended up being a pretty fair balance of the two. The one thing though, I knew I wanted him to have a weapon, but I wasn't sure what. I was going through ideas of maybe a bread roll or a baguette or something bread themed, which is where we end up getting the design that's on the end of his little rocket launcher. But then I looked up references of actual rocket launchers, and then I'm like, it looks like a freaking candy corn. I started playing around with colors, which you'll see later on, and it really came together. It also makes sense because he's a little corny. Haha, I'm so funny. Also, since I'd already gotten some practice with the cookie designs from Poppy Playtime, I was experimenting with a little bit of difference in my process this time around. It has mostly to do with the layers and the way that the outfits are separated from the base. I do plan later on to actually design cosmetics for these characters, and it's a lot easier to do cosmetics if you can kind of take the clothes on and off like one of those little magnetic dress-up dolls, I do really like this process, and I feel like if I practice it some more that it'll be very effective. So here's my draft. I'll have to say that the digital version on this one turned out a lot better. I'm very proud of the digital version, not so much of the rough draft version, but I guess that's the point of a rough draft. As you can see, I didn't even know what his weapon was going to be. The traditional version had this really weird thing going on with his head. I don't even know how to describe that. But I do really like how this came out, and I hope that you all like it as much as I do. In with a bang comes Marshmallow Bunny. For a minute, I was thinking about calling him Bunny Peep Cookie, but I wanted to avoid putting any actual brand names of candies in the title. He is a wind-ranged fighter. His basic attack just fires off rockets, and his charge bar is segmented, and I was thinking that if you hold down the charge, he loads in more gunpowder, all Looney Tunes style. And depending on how long you charge it, it will shoot out with more damage. So if you only charge it long enough for one bar, you'll do significantly less damage than if you wait out and let it charge to 3 or 5 bars. I don't know what the max would be, but you get the idea. His special sends out a guided missile that automatically hits the highest HP enemy on screen. We don't have any specific enemy targeting abilities in the game yet, so I thought that this was a really fun idea. And his ultimate takes it a little bit further, where if you hold it down, you can actually aim at any area on the screen and it will send down a barrage of rockets. Second up is Ragatha. I'm gonna be honest, whenever I first watched the show, she wasn't really my favorite character. She has grown on me, especially in the recent episodes when we've gotten to learn a little bit more about her. I think she has a lot of potential to be a very interesting character. She also has a super cute design that has a very fun translation into CookieRun. Obviously, she was going to have a theme related to yarn, or buttons, or rags, or something of the fabric, crafty nature. But also, her hair kind of made me think of a Twizzler stick. So whenever I was drafting her, I was thinking of Pumpkin Cookie, which plays into her moveset a lot more later whenever we get to that. But she just gives me the vibes of someone who looks very cute, but has some very dark and sinister things going on inside. Things that she probably doesn't want us to know about, but, you know. So this is one I will admit I liked the draft version a lot more than the final product, and I don't really know why. It might have been the way that the hair came out, or maybe her design being related to like buttons and rags and yarn just felt a little bit better in a rough traditional format. I don't really know, but I do think that the final product came out really cute. I absolutely adore her dress. I did decide to put some stitches on her cheek just to add a little bit more to the design and to bring in more of like the yarn sewing stitches motif, almost that she's patched together. Because obviously her dress is patched, but I think it would be fun if like parts of her was patched as well. I don't really have a lore reason for how that would work. Maybe she was just very unhappy with herself and like took certain parts of herself out, put other parts in to kind of be able to be the person that she wanted to be rather than the awful person that she actually is. I don't know. Again, Ragatha is a very interesting character that we don't really know a lot about yet, and I just think it would be really fun, especially with her being a dark type, to play into some of those creepy horror, maybe a little too real kinds of insecurity. In the show, Ragatha has alluded to have been very rich and having horses, which made me think that maybe she has a lot of animals. And this blended with the pumpkin cookie inspiration of her being a dark magic tagger that utilizes summoned creatures rather than her own power. And without further ado, say hello to Twizzled Yarn Cookie. She would have summoned yarn cats, and for her basic attack, these cats attack for her. And then if you charge, you can summon more yarn cats with HP relative to her own. I would think that at most she would have 3, but with additional promotions, she could get more. It kind of makes me think of Olimar from Super Smash Bros., how he summons the Pikmin from the ground and uses them to his advantage, which I think is pretty fun and unlike anything that we have in the game so far. So for her special, she summons yarn birds, and they fly all over the screen, tagging every enemy in sight, and rather than doing damage themselves, they make really quick work of the elemental burst gauges. In the show, she specifically mentions having a horse. For her ultimate, I would think that she would summon a yarn horse, on which you can run around and tag enemies, and then if they're already tagged, then you just deal massive damage each time you run over them. A little bit brutal, sure, but I think it could be pretty fun. Last up is Pomni. Now, Pomni was one of the ones that I had a very clear vision for what I wanted the second that I looked at her. While Pomni has grown over the course of the series, I still think that she is a very tender, sympathetic, perhaps a little bit too emotional kind of character at her core. Whenever she first entered the circus, she was very emotional, and in more recent episodes, she has been shown to show a lot of care for certain characters such as Gummy Goo, to the point that I feel like it could drive her crazy. I was also thinking of how to incorporate her jester design, and I went through a few different ideas, but I settled on snow cones, because the points of snow cone cups worked very well for her jester hat, and I feel like something sort of mushy and melty matched her character as we've been talking about. The other thing is, at least in my experience, some of the most popular snow cone flavors are blue raspberry, cherry, or tiger's blood, or something red colored, and then lemon or something that's usually flavored with yellow yellow dye, and those just so happen to be Pomni's main colors, so I thought that it went really well together. I was also thinking of squid ink cookie, and compared to the draft version, I did incorporate some of the melting a little bit more. I was a little bit iffy at first about the melting dots being red, but looking at her original design, how she has the red cheeks, I was like, it's fine. Maybe she does cry a little bit of jam, it's okay. It's not jam though, it's like actual slushy tears, which I don't know if that's any better. I think that her outfit was the hardest part of this design. Everything else just felt like it came together very well. But figuring out the stripes on her outfit and like how the colors were inverted on either side took me a little bit to get down. You can kind of see me going back and forth and like putting in some lines and erasing some lines and doing all the artistic business. And I actually thought that her little gloves and shoes kind of look like mini snow cones. Cause whenever they take the scoop and they like push it down, so it's like this perfect circle and then there's a little bit of ice where it's been pushed at the edge. I also made some changes to the way that her quote-unquote hat looked between the draft and the final version, because the draft is a little bit closer to her actual canon outfit, but I felt like taking that away and putting the cones closer together ended up looking better from like a CookieRun design standpoint. Now, if you've watched the horror episode, there is a very famous sequence by now where she gets possessed. I know technically this possession was not in her control or something that she would have done under any other circumstances, but I am a huge fan, and it almost felt criminal to not include it somehow. At first, I was thinking about her being in a completely different pose, being more manic, more menacing, but I was really tired whenever I was doing these, and I honestly, as much as I enjoy doing these, I just really wanted to be done, and so I settled for a simple recolor, and I did do some different details on the eyes. It just felt right to really highlight those while making everything else very dark and desaturated compared to her normal form. And like the crying watermarks on her face ended up going really well with the possessed form. And I don't know, she do be kind of scary. A little bit of a horror fan over here, guys, don't mind me. Overall, I do feel like that Pomni is a character that puts other people above herself and even at her own expense, which served as a huge inspiration for her moveset. Speaking of which, let's get into that now. It's time to welcome Snow Cone Melt Cookie. She is a water assist tagger. I was also thinking it was funny to make her and Ragatha both taggers because they can kind of be in competition with each other for who tags first. I don't know, it was a funny thought. Anyway, her moveset was really fun to think about because I don't think Pomni is much of a fighter. Her basic attack tosses little melted snow cone balls, but the funny thing about this is even though they do some damage, I was thinking that whenever the balls miss, she gets stacks of worry, which is indicated by a little gauge over her head. For every stack of worry, her allies get an attack and defense buff. Her special attack is Meltdown. It consumes all of her stacks of worry to deal massive AoE damage around her. Now the thing about this, I decided it should be a friendly fire attack. So whenever you have your Meltdown, you're going to have to get away from your teammates unless you want to hurt them too. And then her ultimate is called Snap, and that's whenever she goes into her possessed form. And she does massive damage while she's in this form, and also like her special, it does do friendly fire, so you have to be really careful about where you're slashing. While she's in snap mode, she would fill up the little tag gauge and get elemental bursts extremely quickly. So yes, very strong, very scary, but her power can also be her weakness. And that does it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Up here is a playlist of other cookies that I've redesigned, and YouTube thinks that you'll like this video. Thank you for joining, have a blessed day, and keep being awesome. See ya!